Hello and welcome to session number 21 of FileMaker Group Therapy for Citizen Developers. My name is Tim Jones. In today's session, we're going to be creating charts from our data, learning how to prepare data to be charted, including sorting records and defining summary fields. We'll create charts using various data sources. We'll also learn how to create QuickCharts, and finally, learn how to format charts to look their best. So let's get right on into the demo. We'll be using the same animal care database that we've been using all along. And here we are. And let's go to the vet form layout here. And you see that on this vet form layout, we have this portal showing the upcoming visits for the current doctor. And as I flip through the other doctors, we see that most of them have some upcoming visits scheduled. Some of them don't. And we built the multi-predicate relationship that this portal is based on back in webinar number 2. It uses today's date and the current vet ID to find these related visit records. Now, we want to count the number of these visits per vet and display the result as a chart, just to see if we're evenly distributing the workload across all our doctors. So we'll go back to the vet list layout where we want to display this chart, and I'll go into layout mode. Now, you can put charts in various parts of the layout, and in this first example, we're going to put this chart in the footer part. So I'll expand the height of the footer part. And I'll move our slogan down. And then we'll use the chart tool here to draw a chart onto the layout. Selecting the chart tool, and I'll make it just as big as will fit in the available space on the footer part, starting up here in the top left corner and all the way across, and maybe about like so. When I release the mouse button, the chart setup dialog box appears. And we use this panel on the right to set all the details of the chart, starting with data source. There are 3 data sources we can use to form a chart: the current found set of records, return delimited data from the current record, or the records in another table that are related to the current record. For this chart, we want each veterinarian record to appear, so I'll choose current found set. And though it won't matter in this chart, I'll go ahead and leave it so that if the vet records are sorted, I still want the chart to display individual record data rather than a summarized group of records. Moving back to the chart section, we'll give the chart a title of upcoming visits. The type menu offers 7 different chart types, including 3 different column charts, 2 different bar charts, and a variety of other favorites. In this case, we'll use the standard bar chart. Now, for the x-axis or horizontal axis of this chart, I'll give it a title of number of upcoming visits. And then for the data to display on the x-axis, we'll specify a calculation. The 3-dot menu here gives you the opportunity to specify field names or a specific field name, or to write a calculation to create some custom result that you'd like used. In this case, we're going to specify a calculation that counts the upcoming visits. Remember that portal that I showed you a little bit ago, indicating that we already have a relationship that, that can find all the upcoming visits. So we'll just use the count function to count the number of records down at the other end of that relationship. There's the relationship there, vet to visit, upcoming visits. And you'll remember that the count function will ignore a record if its counted field is empty. So the safest field to count is the primary key field. I'll use the ID field, which is our primary key, because it can never be empty. There we go. And upon clicking OK, the chart displays the results of our calculation as bars. If there were more series of data to plot on the chart, we would click this Add a X Series button, but there's not, so we'll move on to the Y-axis. For the Y-axis title, I'll type vet, though you could use a field or a formula instead of using static text for any titles just by clicking this menu here and choosing the appropriate choice. For the data on the Y-axis, let's just put the doctor's last names. So we'll specify a field name and choose the name last field from the vet table, the current table. Under axis options, I think we should clean up the x-axis a bit. By default, you can see how it's subdividing our visits into 2/10. And since we obviously can't have a portion of a visit, let's enable this Show Major Ticks option. That puts these tick lines on the x-axis. But then let's change the increment or the step value of the ticks from auto to 1. There we go. Now we've only got whole visits represented along the tick marks on the x-axis. Much better. All right, we'll click Done and exit out of layout mode and save the changes. And we can see our chart in the footer part of this layout. The footer is always visible, even if you scroll, so that's kind of nice. These last 3 doctors, let me scroll down a bit. Schaefer, Benton, and Tolson don't have any upcoming appointments, so obviously it seems by looking at our chart that we need to even out our workload a little bit better. All right, next, let's make a pie chart of visits by animal genus, like dog, cat, snake, etc. So we can see if we need to hire any additional vets who specialize in a particular genus. Now, this chart will require that we sort the visit records by genus in order to summarize them, and we'll also need to create a summary field. So I'll start by going to the visit list desktop layout, where we have over 2,000 visit records, and I'll switch into layout mode. And now I'm going to insert a new part. I'm going to insert a leading grand summary part. That leading grand summary part comes before the body part. I'll increase its height to about 300 or so, give some room for the chart that we're going to place in it. And then we'll draw a chart, again, selecting the chart tool, pointing to where we want to begin the chart box, and click and hold and drag. We'll go the full width, and awesome. And the chart setup dialog box appears. Again, going to the data source first, we'll say we want a chart data that's in the current found set. It tells us that the visit records are currently not sorted. And we're going to go ahead and leave it set to where if we do sort these visit records, that the chart will display summarized groups of records rather than individual record data. Going back to the chart section now, we'll give the chart a title of Visits by Genus. And we're going to set the chart type to pie. Now, a pie chart is unique in that it can only plot one series of data as it compares the values in that one set of numbers against each other, right? The percentage of each contributing value. For the category labels, let's specify the field name of the titles of the genuses. Okay, now remember, we're starting from the context of visit. The layout that we're working on is based on visit. And an animal has a genus, right? But in the visit animal relationship, in that table occurrence, we only have the foreign key value for genus. We don't have a way to see the title or the actual human-friendly name of the genus, but we can get there by just adding another table occurrence to the relationship graph. Let's do that now. We'll sneak over into the manage database command, into the relationships graph, find our visits table occurrence there. Right, there's visit animal right there. And so off of visit animal, I want to string a new table occurrence for genus. Following the good strategy of anchor buoy, I'll name this one accordingly, starting with the head of the squid, as some people analogize this to, and then through animal, and finally on to genus, genus in all caps to remind us that this is an occurrence of the genus table. We'll move that into position over here, and then the relationship will be from, as I expand this one to see it a little bit better, from ID in genus to ID genus. That is primary key to foreign key. We'll collapse that, move the next one down a little bit to prevent the overlap. And now we've got the means by which we can get from any visit record through an animal record over to the genus of that animal. And that then gives us access to the title of the genus. And that's what we wanted to use for our category labels. All right, for the slice data, we're going to count the number of visits in each genus group. That is, once we sort the visit records by genus. Now, that means using a summary field, which is a special type of field that can count or sum or average a field across the found set of records in the current table, which is different than a calculation function like count or sum or average, which we commonly use. In fact, we used it just a moment ago to calculate on records in a related table, not the current table. So from the slice data menu here, I can't specify a calculation. I have to specify a field name, and then we'll go and define this new field that we're going to need that will count up the number of visits. Sneaking over into Manage Database, go to the Fields tab, and I'll create a new field called Count of, and then I'm going to use the ID field as the field to be counted for the same reason we talked about a moment ago, because ID can never be empty. It's the primary key field. For the field type, we'll go Summary, and when we click Create, the Summary Field Options dialog box appears. And I'll say I want to count all the non-blank values in the ID field. Okay, now we've got this new Count of ID field, and we'll say okay. And we'll choose that new Count of ID field as our slice data, as the basis for our slice data. Now the chart's not going to look right until we sort our visits by genus. I mean, it's beautiful, but that's not the kind of pie chart that we were hoping for. Let's do that now. We'll go and sort by genus, and then we'll come back and finish the rest of the chart. So I'll say done, and we'll exit and save. And now we'll sort these 2,000 plus records by, we have to jump over from visit, where we are now, to the related animal record. So visit animal, because that's where we find genus. We can sort by the foreign key field, or if we wanted to, we could go further. We could go, the extra mile and go over to visit animal genus and sort by the title field. I think it's fine in this case to sort by the foreign key field for genus. We're going to get virtually the same results. The pie slices might just be in a different order is all, but nobody's going to know the wiser for that. So now as we sort, look at that, the pie chart shapes up nicely. We'll go back into layout mode, and double clicking on the chart will take me back into chart setup. And let's add a little bit more to the chart. For example, if we say show values on chart, we'll get those genus titles that we asked for to be used as the category labels around the pie slices. We could do that, or we could show a legend, and we get the legend up here. I prefer to show labels around the pie slice just in case there are people who are looking at this chart who might happen to be colorblind, or have a hard time distinguishing the subtleties between the colors. Later, we'll talk about how to change the color scheme, by the way. I'm going to take away the legend. In addition to the labels, let's say show percentages, maybe in whole numbers rather than 2 decimal places. There we go. So it rounds them off to the nearest whole percentage number. And we can also ask for actual values to appear if we want. So now we see that there were 1,316 visits to our animal care clinic by dogs, 382 by cats, and so on likewise. And we can format those numbers to look better. For example, perhaps adding commas where necessary by turning on the system settings, separators, or use thousand separators. All right, with those improvements made to our pie chart, I'll say done and exit and save. And we see up in the leading grand summary part, the pie chart that's summarizing all of the visits, these over 2,000 records of visits by the genus of the animal that was brought in for us to care for. Because this chart is in a grand summary part of the layout, it shows results for the entire found set of records. It would behave likewise if it were placed in the header part or the footer part of the layout. However, put it in a sub-summary part and it will chart only data from that subgroup of records. Let's change the sort order to group these visit records by year. Now, in order to do that, we need to calculate the year number of each visit based on its date. So let's go and create a calculation field that will return the year number of each visit. I'll call it year of visit. Make it a calculation, hit create, and there's an easy function to use. It's called the year function. The year function will extract the year portion out of whatever date you feed it. Here's our date field. There we go. That's going to return a number. We'll say OK and OK. That year field will get added into the body part. So we can see as I scroll down through these records that every row, every record of data now has its year calculated. This visit was in 2016 and thus the year number. This visit was in 2019 and likewise the year number. Eventually, of course, we'll get rid of the year of visit field from the body part because that looks horrible. But now that we have that year of visit field created, we can change the sort order to include it. Here it is, year of visit, and we'll move it to the top or move to the other below it, like so. So year of visit will be our primary sort field. And sort. And now we get all the 2016 records together. And then likewise, all the year 2017 visits together and on down. There's the 2018s. Now we'll jump back into layout mode. And scrolling up to the top. Now I'm just going to convert this leading grand summary part into a leading sub-summary part. Double-clicking on the part label here will open up the part definition dialog box so we can change this part to another type. We'll say sub-summary when sorted by, and visit animal is the relationship I want to find here. There we go. And based on the foreign key value for genus. There we go. And now we get that sub-summary part when sorted by. Oh, I didn't want to go genus. My mistake. My mistake. I wanted to base this sub-summary on the year of the visit, based on the year of the visit. Forget what I just had, what I had just done. There we go, because that's how we're trying to break these records up by year. So the sub-summary is going to be by year of visit. The records at present are sorted by year first and then by ID genus. All right, now we've converted this into a sub-summary part. We'll get rid of the year of visit field and label that were added to the body part, and we'll shrink up the body part commensurately. And we'll switch back to browse mode. And now above the 2016 records, we see a pie chart that shows us the breakdown of visits by animal genus, 227 dog visits, 63 cat visits, and so forth. You'll recall that those numbers are smaller than the ones that we were seeing earlier. Certainly, they do not add up to 2,147 because this is just the subset of the 2016 visit records. So we didn't do anything to the chart other than just move it into a different type of part, moving it from a grand summary part to a sub-summary part. As I scroll down to find the 2017 records, you'll see that they likewise are preceded by an occurrence of that sub-summary part that has visits by genus for the 2017 records. Now, I think we should improve the title of the chart a little bit so that it includes the year, and to make these charts more self-explanatory. We can reference the year of visit field as part of the chart title, but that's a normal calculation field, not a summary field. So from which record will it get its value? Well, because this chart is in a leading sub-summary part, one that appears above the records that it summarizes, any calculations that we use that refer to a normal calculation field or even a standard text or number or date or time or timestamp field will get its value from the record just below it, from this record right here. That is the first record in the group of records being summarized. That's important to note. As I go back into layout mode and double click on the chart, we'll revise the chart title, saying we want to specify a calculation now, and we'll go visits by genus space in space, and then we'll come out to the right and append or concatenate the year of visit field, which I have right down here. There. Okay, we'll say okay, and we can see the preview is showing us a good year number there at the end, and done, and exit and save. And the 2016 chart includes the year number 2016. Again, it's grabbing it from the first record here in its summarized set of records. And likewise, as I scroll down to the next batch of records, the chart grabs its year of visit value from the first record below it. And likewise, in the same manner with the rest of them. Nice. In these first few charts, we used the current found set of records as their sources of data. In this next chart, we'll use related records. Here, we wish to chart the total dollar amount spent by year for each household. I'll go to the animal form layout and just point out that we know that for each animal, when they visited, and we know the amount paid for that visit. We also know the household that that animal belongs to. Let me go to the related household record. And so let's say that we want to add a chart onto this household form layout that will plot the amount paid by this household per year on their visits to our animal care clinic. Going to layout mode, we'll select the chart tool. And let me scroll just a touch to the right here. There we go. And we'll draw a chart that's as big as we can possibly make it and still stay within the tab control there. All right, when the chart setup dialog box appears, of course, we will go to the data source section first, and we'll set our data source for this chart as related records. And then from the related table menu, I'm going to look for a relationship that starts from household because the layout that we're on is based on household, and then goes through animal and on to visit. Well, we have household to animal, but we don't have that third length, if you will, that third step of household to animal to visit. So we'll have to create it. We can jump into the manage database command from the bottom of this menu, back into the relationships graph. There's household animal, and to the right of that, we want to tack on another table occurrence for visits. There we go. And again, following the good anchor buoy naming strategy, we'll start with the trailhead, if you will, and then each stop along the path until we get to our eventual destination, household animal visit. Move that over here, widen it out so we can see the whole title, and then create the relationship where the ID animal foreign key field needs to match up with the ID primary key field of animal. So ID animal to ID in animal. There we go. We'll say OK there. And now we can go back to the related table menu and find that relationship that we were looking for earlier. Here it is, all the visits for all the animals that belong to the current household. Under sort order of related records, since we want the visit data sorted by year, we'll specify and we'll choose the year of visit field that we created a moment ago. There we go. And we'll say OK. And we'll leave it set to display summarized groups of records if the records are sorted or because they will be sorted. It's different here when you're using the related records as your data source. You can actually build the sort order into the chart, whereas when it's based on the current found set, you have to sort the records yourself in browse mode. All right, going back to the chart section, for the title, we will give this let's do a calculation. Let's say we want the whole household name to be included. So we'll run up to the current table household and use the title field there. And then we'll just append the static text of total paid, like so. And that'll end up giving us something like the Jones family, Tim and Kristen, total paid as our title. Okay. For the chart type, column is what we want, so we'll leave it set there. For the x-axis title, we'll type year, though you could use fields or calculations for any chart title so that they can be dynamic. For the x-axis data, we'll specify a field and we'll choose the year of visit field. Year of visit, which is found at the end of that relationship that we just built, household animal visit. And there's that year of visit field. That'll put the year numbers along the x-axis. Fantastic. For the y-axis title, let's say total paid. And then for the y-axis data field, we might think of summing that total paid field that lives in the related visit table, but that wouldn't break it down by year. In fact, let me show you. If I go here and specify a calculation that sums up, so we use the sum function, okay, right, that sums up the total paid value down at the other end of that relationship. We'll say OK, and you'll see that that the result is the same value every year because that formula is returning the sum of all total paid values across all years. It is not summarized by year. It's not subgrouping them. For that, we use a summary field. So I'll go back to the y-axis data menu and choose to specify a field name instead. And we'll need to go in and define a new summary field, a new summarizing field. So first I'll track down the right relational path, household animal visit, just to kind of put myself in the right context. Then we'll go to the manage database command that's always available at the bottom of these table occurrence menus. And in the visit table, I want to create a field that's going to summarize this total paid field, okay? That'll give us the total of all of those total paid numbers. So I'll call it appropriately, total of total paid. It's not going to need a comment. And we want to set its field type to summary. As I click create, the summary options dialog box appears, which we've seen once before. This time I want to say, please total up the values in the total paid field. And OK. And OK again. And then I'll find that total of total paid field to use as our y-axis values, and we'll say okay, and much better. Now we're getting the results of the summarizing power of a summary field. If we turn on under axis options, show data points on chart, we'll actually get those data values at the top of each column. If we jump over here into the under axis options into the y-axis tab, we can even do some formatting on those numbers, right? It knows that those are numbers, but we can say format them as currency. And then if we scroll a little further down, using separators, perhaps using the system settings to govern separators. And then for currency notation, let's put the currency symbol at the beginning, which is apropos for US currency notation. And there we go. The numbers look great. All right, we'll say done with this chart. I'll make it so that it's stretchy in case any users make their window wider or taller. The tab control itself is also stretchy, so we should see the result of that stretchiness. And there, as we make the window wider, can't make it much taller, but the chart certainly broadens out. And if we flip around between records, we can see a yearly breakdown of dollars spent by each household at our animal care clinic. Fantastic. Now, there's actually a second way to create charts in FileMaker Pro called QuickCharts. And you do it from a table view or from the table view of a layout like this. I'll jump over into our visit list desktop layout again. And let's say we view this layout as a table instead of in list view. Okay, so here I am in table view of this data. Table view kind of throws away all of the formatting from the layout and just displays a spreadsheet-like display of the fields that are on the layout, the fields that are present on the layout. You can widen columns like you do in Excel. You can even rearrange columns just by dragging them, which you can't easily do in Excel. And you can also easily sort records using the column header menus. Let's say we wanted to sort the visits by the veterinarian doctor who treated that animal. We'll say, clicking on the menu there and then in the vet name last field, sort ascending, and the records now appear in order by the veterinarian doctor who attended that particular visit. All the Bentons, then the Blackwoods, the Chews, and so forth. Okay. Now, you should also be able to easily create a chart, but as I look, let's say we wanted a chart by total paid, as I look at this menu, the chart command is missing. What? Well, do you remember the custom menus that we learned how to build back in webinar number 13? They are interfering with this menu, omitting the chart command. So let's set this layout to use the standard FileMaker menu set, and then we'll be all right. I'll go into layout mode, and I'll go into layout setup. And you see how the menu set that this layout is set to use right now is the file default menu set. Well, which one is that? Well, let me show you. As we go to manage custom menus, we can see that the file default, the default menu set for this whole animal care file is the animal care menu set, one of our custom menu sets. It's not the standard FileMaker menus. So when the layout says, oh, just use the file default, that doesn't always mean the standard FileMaker menus, because you and I can set the file default to be one of our own custom menu sets. Let's, however, change this layout to use the standard FileMaker menus to get that missing charting command back on our table header menus. We'll say okay there, and then exit out of layout mode, save the changes. And now we've got the data sorted by the veterinarian, and I'll hit the total paid column heading here. There's that chart command that had been missing. And we'll say, you know what, chart the total paid numbers by veterinarian last name. And instantly a quick chart appears. That's how easy it's supposed to be for QuickCharts to work. Just get into table view, and if you want to, you can sort records, you can group them, and then you can specify by which field you'd like to base, or on which field you'd like to base the chart. Now, QuickCharts can be very temporary. You can look at it, you can print it, right? And then you can cancel out of it and just it will not exist anywhere permanently. It will be discarded. Or you can save it as its own separate layout like this. Click Save as Layout. It asks, well, what do you want to call the new layout? And do you want it to show up in the layout menus or be a hidden layout? Let's say I don't need this layout to remain any, or I don't want this chart to remain any longer than just for our own viewing enjoyment. So I'll cancel out of there. But before we move on, in our last few minutes here, let's take a look at the styles pane, the third pane, or the third section of this panel on the right. This is where they put all the eye candy. This is where you can set your chart style, choosing between solid and shaded, that is solid colors and gradients, in either a kind of a two-dimensional flat perspective or an extruded three-dimensional perspective. There's solid colors in 3D and gradients or shaded in 3D. Below that, you've got all sorts of color schemes from which you can choose, right? So lots of fun to be had here. You can set the chart background to be filled with either a solid fill or transparent no fill. If you choose a solid fill, then simply choose your color from this color picker menu, which regrettably does not respond to the color scheme that you chose up above. Let's say I want to go maybe with that background color, and we get that background color as the solid fill, or you can go with a gradient fill there for the chart background. Maybe I'll go white-ish to tan-ish there, and it goes from bottom left to top right. You can show major grid lines, minor grid lines, and a variety of other formatting capabilities. So don't forget to check out the styles pane when you're formatting your chart, because you've got all sorts of fun options that you can apply there. All right, I'll cancel out of this quick chart and we'll wrap up our time together today. So, are there any questions about what we looked at today? Creating charts from your data.